Let's talk about these jobs numbers, right? They were pretty darn good if you ask me, or maybe they weren't. Maybe they were flat. Mike Ryan is here with us, Senior Vice President of Madison Performance Group. Thanks for being with us.
Hi, Tracy. Thanks for having me.
So, okay, the numbers were good in that we saw a continual increase in that. The two things that bothered me the most is that the job force itself hasn't changed, nor has our wage amount, right? We're not seeing an increase in wages. How did you read it?
I read it as pretty good news, actually. When you look at the jobs growth, the majority of it is coming out of the private sector. We had a $216,000 net, but we really had a $230,000 increase in private sector. So I think that's encouraging for employees, the people that are actually be looking for work right now. It might not necessarily be good news for employers. One of the things that we've noticed is that the best and brightest of an organization, the people that have actually picked up the slack over the last year or so, are the ones that are actually starting to look for work right now.
Oh, interesting.
So I think that's going to shift the power from the employer to the employee, and I think you're going to see increases in interventions designed to try to keep employees.
So maybe we will start to see wage increases?
Probably. I think that'll be one thing. You're certainly seeing hiring now in small businesses. You're seeing hiring in professional services, knowledge-based workers. And I think those organizations are probably going to grow faster than some of the other organizations that are out there right now. So yes, I think you will see that.
We've seen all along, though, still growth in healthcare. Your basic, those sectors have still pretty much held on through it all. But what about like sectors like construction, manufacturing? They're struggling along the way.
They are struggling along the way. And what we are seeing are organizations right now that are still trying to work within the context of their business model to be as effective as they can. One of the things that all organizations are trying to do is maximize that discretionary output by their employees, whether or not it's in construction or any other industry right now. And along those lines, that's some of the things that we're involved in from a recognition point of view. That's a big part of helping companies do that.
But we were talking a little earlier about how it all kind of comes together, right? It all comes down to the consumer.
Right.
I have to buy your product.
Right.
That would require you to make more of it, and then you hire more people.
Right.
But if I'm not shopping, if I'm strapped because inflation is causing me to, spend all my discretionary income, where does that leave the job market?
The job market, from the perspective of the job market, I think it's going to be really reliant upon organizations to access the impact of their employee base to really effectively drive consumer behavior. Organizations can only really focus on their individual output, and I think employees that are helping consumers become attached to the brand and recognize that the brand is really something that they want to be attached to and loyal to is really going to help that particular organization create jobs within the context of their own company. Are
we still seeing like a disparity among the states? I mean, some states are still in really bad shape compared to others, aren't they?
We are. I noticed that there was unexpected increases in California, Michigan, high-tech, high industrial states. I think the automotive industry right now is benefiting from increases. So yeah, I think one of the challenges that you're going to see right now among employers is making sure that they have the high-skilled workers that they need for growth.
High-tech, though, is interesting because we're starting to see pickup in, purchases and things like that, right? Companies are spending cash on equipment and such, but is the equipment replacing the manpower?
Yeah, in some industries I think that's possible. In other industries I think you're going to see an acceleration of the need for people, especially in knowledge-based workers where it's actually the person, the individual employee that's the source of competitive advantage for companies. The role that they play in maintaining good customer relationships and creating demand in the marketplace, I think it's actually going to increase in some areas.
Retail could use some salespeople again, man.
Absolutely.
You can't get help to save your life when you walk into a store. When do you think we'll start to see this, though, this pickup? Because I know the market's kind of on hold till what's happening with QE2 versus QE3. I think companies might be a little hesitant to start spending money just yet.
Yeah, I think there's some uncertainty, especially among big companies. The data that we're seeing, though, reflects about a 33% increase in the organization's interest in adding to staff.
Okay,
I also think, too, Tracy, that you're going to see companies begin to hire once they realize that they've kind of overtaxed and might not necessarily to get much more production out of the existing employee base. When you look at the amount of overstretching that employees went through in the last couple of years, combined with the fact that they may not be as emotionally committed to their current jobs, I think organizations are going to realize that if they are going to grow, they're going to need to add staff.
I think that's a great point. And for a bunch of months now, I've been sitting here saying you can only suck blood from a stone for so long, and meanwhile we keep doing it.
Right.
And we keep doing it, and our productive hours have increased. We've seen that, right? But is the next step to say, hey, as opposed to sucking blood out of a stone, I'm going to offer you overtime. I'm going to skip hiring that next guy, but I'll give you some overtime hours.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think that organizations need to throw overtime dollars at an employee. Employees over the last year or so have been working a lot of unpaid overtime.
That's true.
And in many cases, a simple thank you, a simple acknowledgement goes a long way to recognizing that particular effort. Obviously people work for money, but I think sometimes just a simple pat on the back, some gratitude goes a long way as well.
I agree with you. And I know we have to wrap, but my last question to you is,
yes.
The hope was that we were going to see temporary hires turn into full-time. We're not really seeing that, are we?
Not yet, but I think we will in the near future. I really do.
I think these healthcare costs are going to be a big issue, though. Why should I pay them if I could keep you on part-time?
That's another side of it, of course.
Mike Ryan, Senior Vice President of Madison Performance Group, and no, it doesn't have anything to do with Madison Square Garden like I thought. I'm like, yeah, we're going to talk about sports. Not much. We're going to take a break. When we get back, we have a small business highlight. We have to talk more about, believe it or not, what's going on in the mortgage world, because the Fannie and Freddie, it's disastrous. We'll be right back.
Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate it.